What's up, everybody? It's Cloaken, and I'm back with another Meet the Mastermind, and I'm joined by none other than Surprise Birthday, Chief of Products for Super Evil Megacorp. Q, thank you, man.
Hello? No
Yeah,
problem. Glad to
thanks
be
for,
here.
thanks for being here. This is like one of the busier times that I've felt in my period here with the company, and as someone who's sort of at the fulcrum or the focal point of all of that pressure, I really appreciate your time. It's pretty precious, particularly now. So,
Yeah. No, thank you. No, I needed a break, and it's good to just chat a little bit and maybe just reveal a little bit about ourselves to the players as well.
I love that, man. And speaking of that, we do have some interesting little tidbits for you guys, the community who are joining us. We're happy to announce that we are nearing sort of a geo beta state for Catalyst Black, which is really, really exciting. And alongside the typical geo beta experience, we are also going to be running an early access program. Early access is a pretty loaded term in terms of the industry. We're putting our own little super evil twist to it and calling it the Secret Service. So we're looking forward to getting you involved. And if you'd like to learn more or be first to take action to get involved in the Secret Service, you can find your way to that through the Discord. So that's discord.gg/Catalyst Black. You guys in the Discord will be the first to hear about all this and the first to sort of raise your hand to get involved. So definitely head over there and stay tuned for any upcoming announcements that'll be headed that way. So on that note, man,
I just learned that you decided to call it the Secret Service.
oh, we
That's
gotta
good.
we gotta put some spice in it. We can't just call it Axis or something. We'll call it the Secret Service. I joke about this internally, but I actually believe this. Like when I think about super evil megacorp and what it means, there's kind of like two angles on that. There's the almost cartoonish Joker like maniacal super evil that comes to mind, almost
Mhm.
like a comic book. And then there's this more like John Wick style. And I think of Super Evil Megacorp having been here, for what is 6 months now, maybe almost. It's definitely more John Wick. It's like a little more like we'll assassinate you in a tuxedo kind of
The
thing.
high table.
Yeah, yeah,
Super
totally.
Evil's like the high table.
Yep. So I think calling this thing the Secret Service and getting our community to feel a little bit of what it's like to be on the inside, gonna be cool.
Mm-mm-mm.
So, well, man, busy times, obviously, working on Catalyst Black, but the community and likely many who are watching right now know you from your time with the company previous on Vainglory. You were a big part
Yeah.
of everything the team did, very, very public facing part of what the team was doing. You were chief of product back then and a founding sort of member of the company as well. So that's huge. And I would love to start maybe talking about your experience on Vainglory. I know that game in particular broke so many rules, pushed the industry in so many new ways and inventive ways, particularly on touch devices and in mobile. But I'd like to learn from you, what were some of the biggest learnings of your time on that game, as a designer and as a developer, you know, how would you sort of frame that as a milestone in your career? What did you learn? What are your biggest takeaways? That kind of thing.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. Let me just kind of start. Not all of them are sort of like lessons learned, but they're all like things that I found a little bit surprising going when I was on the other side of the tunnel.
Yeah.
The first one was making a MOBA was actually pretty hard, and not just like saying, hey, well, MOBAs already exist as a genre, so how hard is it to make another one? Actually, early on in the early playtests, we had all the elements of a MOBA. We had the heroes, we had the items, we had the last hitting, the turrets. It was actually horribly not fun. Matches would go on for about 45 minutes in a three. This was back when it was 3v3, and we could not figure out why matches took that long. And all the things that we did to try to speed up the duration of the match, I wanted it to be closer to 20 minutes, which we eventually got to for 3v3. I couldn't figure out why things would drag on so long, and it's incredibly boring in the final 10 minutes.
Hmm.
And actually, just even if you say I'm going to make a MOBA, I know how League of Legends works. I know Dota pretty well.
Yeah.
Even if you know that, the slightest differences that you made, like in our cases, the heroes were different. We had a gold mine. It was a 3v3 one lane map. Those things really upset the balance of the game to the point where it's utterly not fun. Even though you're starting on pretty rock solid foundations,
Yeah.
how hard is it to make a MOBA? Ended up being pretty hard, just even from a game design perspective. Let alone the fact that we were also trying to target a certain visual fidelity in 2014 on mobile, tablet, battery powered devices, essentially.
Yeah.
That is a whole separate challenge. But it was a lot harder than I thought it would be.
So how did you solve that? Like the finding of the fun in those moments? What would, if you had to succinctly describe the kinds of decisions that were made that sort of illuminated as like, yes, this is the right path. Could you categorize them in some way? Was it just like, taking some of the options out, which might sound crazy at a high level, but sometimes, focusing the sort of activity of players can help with that as well. Cause you really sort of point people in the direction of, no, this is what this game is about, rather than having it too widespread. Like, how would you describe it?
I don't have any generalizations about how to find the fun from like
Yeah.
just one instance of it. Like this will be probably as a game designer, my second Caddis Black would be my second time trying to build something and find the fun.
Right.
But the first time around, I don't have any general wisdom for all game designers. Like if you do this, you will find the fun.
Yeah.
You do have to be pretty flexible, and you have to like make drastic changes really fast and then test them. And the problem is, though, testing them internally is kind of tricky sometimes. Back then, our company was very small. And we kind of had the same 8 play testers for our 3v3 game mode. And it was actually very, very hard to not to miss. It was very easy to miss stuff that you wouldn't get until you see real players. For me, back to the particular challenge, like the one big problem was that the matches were really long. Like that was one of the biggest problems we had. For me, I had to unlearn the obvious. I thought matches would be shorter if I simply give you more gold. I thought matches would be shorter if I simply made all the turrets a lot weaker. And all the things that are super obvious, or if I made the map smaller, I thought that would make the match shorter. All the things that associate with bigness, toughness, I thought if I just cut those, the match would be shorter, and I would solve my 45-minute match length problem. And it ended up not being that. In this particular case, it's not a generalizable learning, but it turns out that the reason MOBAs end is not even progress. So if you make the turrets weaker, you make progress towards the base faster. It's not even that. MOBA games end because of entropy. After a certain amount of entropy is introduced in the game has to end. And what I mean by that is, in late game, when both teams have a lot of gold and they're super fed, the lethality is also a lot higher than early game. So the time to kill is suddenly a lot shorter. So even though let's say you're ahead on gold and you're the weapon carry, it takes a very small mistake to end you, even if you're fed. But it's late game. So other people, they're behind on gold, but they still have gold. In late game, everything is just it's just very tightly wound, and it's very easy for something to snap in one team's position to completely unravel, just because everyone is so powerful. Not just because I need to snowball it and make the winning team more powerful since the game ends sooner. What I actually need is for everyone to just kind of everything to unravel at a much lower threshold. If you mess up, things are going to be a lot worse for you, both for the stronger team and the weaker team. And I call that a game state that has a lot more entropy, and that's what actually ends games. That was my my big abstract learning.
Yeah, no, that's
in one particular problem, which is the matches were too long. There were other issues, but I found the most interesting one.
That's super cool, man. I love hearing about that. Now, I think the thing that I've really appreciated the most about the few opportunities we've had to talk games is your passion for design. You are a designer's designer. Like it seems like not just in terms of software, but even hardware products. Like there's an element of true appreciation. I think I'd put Tommy in this category as well. True appreciation for expertise.
Tommy's our CTO, but he's in another life he could be an artist.
Absolutely, dude. I love that. It's like this. This ability to appreciate industrial design, architectural design, game design, and I really love that mentality about Super Evil Megacorp. But I would love to maybe unpack the concept or the topic of design from your perspective, particularly in games. Are there games right now, or is there a genre of game or a type of game from a design standpoint that you find fascinating? Are you inspired by? What right now is sort of fueling that design bug in your mind at a more meta level?
Yeah, so I love playing indie games because I think they're probably the most interesting place to harvest design ideas and understand like what people are doing. I'm also someone who's never really caught on to the Dark Souls franchise, so that's
Mm.
something that I'm trying to unpack right now,
Yeah.
because it's very smartly designed. Though it doesn't like perfectly line up with my taste, so I have never really gotten super into it. But I'm trying to like understand that as well. And I'm also, I was a huge StarCraft fan, which led to Dota, which led to League of Legends. Well, StarCraft, then Warcraft, then Dota, then League of Legends. That whole track,
Yeah.
people who like one of those usually like some of
Yeah.
the other ones on that list.
Totally.
And where I really got started though is actually with Doom. So I love Doom Eternal and Doom 2016.
Yeah.
But actually, way back in the day, the first time I've ever done anything with video games that wasn't playing them, but actually making them was modding Doom. And I actually recently went back and I found a YouTube video where someone did like a let's play of certain like megawatts that like had people put their levels together into a megawatt.
Yeah.
And there was some of my work was in those, and I saw like a YouTube of someone playing it, and I watched like I've never. This is like back in the 90s and early 2000s where if you do something, you don't really see, like I made a Doom level. I don't really actually see a person play it on the internet.
Right.
I don't see the reaction. This is pre-YouTube, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I made something, and this is the first time ever. Like I was like, wow, I'm actually gonna see somebody play my level. You don't get to see that. That was me as a teenager. And of course, as I watched the person played it, I noticed that I was a complete asshole, the designer. Like I was such an asshole. Like I found a way to teleport monsters without triggering the teleport sound or effect. Ooh. And I abused that. This is teenage me here. Being like, oh, you know what I'm gonna do is you're gonna open this door and it's gonna trigger these monsters. They're gonna immediately teleport behind you with no sound.
Oh my gosh.
And I did that constantly.
What a way to tilt a player, dude.
Yeah.
There's no reaction time, no chance to survive.
You just have to know.
Yeah, you just have to know.
But the funny thing is Dark Souls does it all the time.
Totally. I was about to say that, dude. That's the common ground there for sure. Hey, you got to find that link. I want to put that link in the caption if you find it. I would love to.
Yeah, I'll find that link of that video. But I was a huge jerk. That's so cool, as a level designer.
Oh, I love it. Dark Souls. I got my first taste of Dark Souls on Demon Souls. I was very early on the Dark Souls train, and then I kind of fell off as everyone else was getting on board. I'm like, nah, I'm too cool for this. But I remember playing through Demon Souls for the first time. This is way back in, when did it come out? Like 2007, maybe 2008. I don't know, somewhere around there. And I remember playing that game and just being like, this is so incredibly different. I loved from a design perspective, the thing that I loved is it was a single player game that was incredibly oppressive. The sort of environmental design, fantasy, everything. Yeah. So oppressive. You felt so alone, and yet they were doing so many interesting things with multiplayer components, like the shadows or the bloodstains, and able to see other people playing or making mistakes within the world. And I thought this was such a weird hybrid of a multiplayer single player that I'd never seen before, where it truly is a single player experience, but you feel the weight of other people experiencing the same kind of dark journey in some ways. And then they did have the ability to invade other people's worlds. That was sort of their innovative thing. But I was mostly more fascinated by the fact that they were able to take this very dark and oppressive game. There's one level in Demon Souls where you're in a world that constantly is taking your health down because you're like walking through poison. It just feels horrible. And then you'd all of a sudden have a spirit of someone else who was playing that level walk right by you. And it was almost like this ray of light of like, oh my gosh, someone else is doing this too. And
yeah,
that was so fascinating to me because I'd never played anything like it, where it was this oppressive single player, but the feeling of other people doing the same thing at the same time was super cool.
Yeah, it's cool. Yeah. You gonna play the remake?
Oh yeah, dude. I will definitely play it. I'm sure that'll bring back, I haven't played that game in so long. I'm sure just playing it, just watching the trailer brought flashbacks. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. My mind doesn't hold on to things very, very well, but I'm sure that playing it again will bring back a lot of memories. So I'll definitely play it. But yeah, very cool, man. So you also are quite the internet savvy individual as well. And I know you frequent the YouTubes quite a bit. What are your thoughts on design in games as it relates to YouTube? You know, the average consumer is getting a little more savvy these days, and there's even a sort of an outlet for people to talk about design at large. And I know this is something that I geek out about. I know you geek out about it, but you know, do you have favorite sort of YouTubers or content creators in this space that you follow or respect, or you learn from, or even appreciate? You know?
Yeah, I try to. So design. So design is a weird thing. It's like game design is a weird thing because it's a job that people do full time,
Yeah.
and yet like there isn't any kind of curriculum. There's no school. You can't major in it. Well, okay, there are game design schools. I take that back.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of game designers didn't like. If you're a lawyer, you went to law school. Okay,
Yeah.
period. If you are a game designer, you may not necessarily have. Chances are you did not like study game design as some kind of serious curriculum. So the knowledge, acquiring game design knowledge, and just as like anyone in any profession has to continue to absorb new knowledge and understand, like, as a doctor, you got to understand, like, hey, what are some new things that are out there that are happening that I need to learn about? What are people prescribing? How do I, like, what is the latest thinking on XYZ thing, disease or whatever? And as a game designer, you also have to think a bit about how you educate yourself and continue to get better at what you do. Like, I think it's part of your responsibility. It's part of your job to do that. It's a lot, and I think it's easy to think that, oh, game designers just like play games and have opinions on them and then design what they think would be cool. That makes you a player who has opinions about games.
Right.
That's making you a game designer. But it turns out that YouTube's a great educational source for many things. When I have kids, I'm gonna like teach my kids math through YouTube, by the way, because it's like, 3 blue, 1 brown, the best math education you can get for free on YouTube right now.
My daughter has become an artist through YouTube. Like, she 100% has crafted her artistry as a result of all the tutorials. So she's 10 years old and she can draw characters that I couldn't dream of drawing. And it's all, you should just sit in front of these tutorials. It absolutely is viable.
Yeah, but I listen to a lot of so I have a couple of favorite like YouTubers that I really love watching, and all they do is just spend hours and hours breaking down things that they notice about games. One of them is a guy named Joseph Anderson, and this guy's latest thing is he's got this 4-hour-long video about The Witcher, and I haven't played the Witcher series, by the way, but like, I'm willing to listen to this guy talk for 4 hours.
That's awesome.
And he usually does like 1 to 2 hour long breakdowns of a particular game, Breath of the Wild. He's done Bloodborne. Just check out his list. What I love about doing this is that these people always notice something that you miss when you play the game. And there's always some angle that changes how you look at how a game works. And it oftentimes changes how you appreciate a game. For example, I did not really enjoy Hollow Knight originally, but this YouTuber, Joseph Anderson, changed my mind on it significantly. So that's like, it's interesting to get a second look. You only have so much time to play games and play them over and over again to get, to develop your own perspective. But there are a lot of very insightful people out there sharing their own. Another one I really enjoy is a YouTube channel called Patch Quest. Patch Quest is just the name of the game the indie game that he's trying to make, but he also breaks down like what he's doing, why he's doing it. And he also talks about other games. Which is really cool. So those are just like 2 channels out there that I find really insightful.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah, and it's crazy how much stuff you can learn from YouTube right now.
It's really true. Like and kind of fascinating, the sort of pathway to becoming a game designer. In fact, the title of game designer, it's actually a relatively new career path. Games are relatively new, but yes. I reflected on this with Shane DeBerry from Blizzard. But like back in early Blizzard days, like even on World of Warcraft, the idea of design was just sort of born out of the team, right? It was like you had engineers, you had artists, right? And design initially on Blizzard side of things was not named. It was a thing that happened in between these more kind of, I don't know, at the time, rudimentary roles. Like you needed to have art, you needed to have engineering, and design kind of happened between the two, right? But as games got more complex, and particularly on like World of Warcraft and beyond, the idea of sort of focusing in on that and investing in that became a much more needed thing. So it is kind of interesting that this career path has sort of evolved over the last couple decades, and really hit.
Yeah, I mean, it had a designer. John Romero was, I think, a full-time designer, right?
Mm.
That was his role, and that was also very, very early on in the days.
Yeah,
Yeah, but I can totally understand, like, back then, companies they got artists, they got programmers.
yeah,
And they're like, what else is there in the
yeah.
world?
We make video games. This is it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I understand back then, why it's
Mhm.
like that. Now there's marketing, there's publishing, there's community,
Yeah, it's like social
there's
media.
infrastructure.
Yeah.
There's so much more. People talk about, like, why are there so many people making video games now? And it's
Oh, man.
and I haven't even been in, like, you've been in much bigger productions than I have, at being in Blizzard and stuff. I haven't even seen the full scope of how many people and how many functions that you didn't even think needed to be done
Yeah.
to upkeep World of Warcraft.
Yeah, it has its pluses and it has its minuses. It's like just like anything, the bigger things get, the sort of slower they move. And I really value and appreciate the sort of wild, inspired abandon that a team like Super Evil has, where it's just like, Chris said it this morning on our team meeting, where he's like, just own your stuff, guys. Just like own it. Like, don't ask, just go, like
Yeah.
sprint, right? And that is so freeing, just to know that you have a team that's sort of trust falling into each other constantly. And I think the larger your team gets, it's
Yeah.
amazing the speed at which these big teams can move. Like a team like Heroes, we had a 3-hero pipeline that was just moving light speed. It was crazy. Overwatch the same way. You watch these teams make these massive contributions to the game at such a high velocity, but it does come at a cost, And so, but yeah, making games is insane, dude. I daily, I'm like, wow, why is it so hard? It's so challenging, and yet it's so fun. So, well, man, I want to talk a little bit. I want to shift gears and begin to pick your brain a little bit about Catalyst Black. I'd love for you to take me back in time to that moment where you knew there was a quest to make a game too for Super Evil. And as chief product officer, where do you begin? Obviously, you have all the context that VG led you sort of out of, or you were coming out of from VG. But where did you begin? Where did you take the team?
Yeah.
How did you help lead that conversation and that investigation?
I'd say this: as a game company, while you're working on one game, every single creative person in your company is already, like, bubbling up with ideas potentially to make a second game.
Yeah.
That's just, like, part of being a creative professional.
Mm-hmm.
You're kind of, the time it takes to make one game is far longer than the time it takes for you to get the itch to make something different.
It's true.
And I think that's kind of like, it's true for, like, writers for, like, long-term TV shows or whatever. They're like, sometimes with anime, you get that episode that feels like it's in a different genre. To me, that's like, the writer's like, man, I've been doing this for, like, X seasons, like, years now. How about let's do a fun episode that's, like, feels like it's a page from a different genre. Like, you're always developing ideas. The itch to build something else is always there. Let me just first say that.
So funny you said that. Like, I was noticing how Path of Exile is like formally embraced that as a reality of their game updates.
Oh yeah.
Like, where
their seasons are like, let's just, like, toe the line of what this genre should
totally
have and not have.
their
No,
season
Warframe
right now
is like
Harvest,
that.
dude. Yeah, Warframe's the same way.
Warframe is literally like that.
Their season in PoE right now is called Harvest. It's literally like Harvest Moon meets
Farmville.
it's like Harvest Moon meets the God.
Farmville, but you grow mobs that drop loot that you can fight and drop loot. Yeah.
I mean, again,
So the itch to build something new is always there.
I'm not trying to make fun of
Yeah.
it. It's super respect is awesome. But to your point, that stuff exists, right? We all love these other genres. We all love these other
Yeah.
sew them into what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the desire to make something different is always there. And maybe it's like there's less of it in the first year when you're making something because you're so focused on making it, but it's always there. Towards sometime around maybe a year and a half ago, I think that's when we sort of officially said we need to kick off this project. And I think we said we wanted to hand off Vainglory to another company, to a different set of hands, because we as Super Evil has basically put all of our energy into trying to grow this game, and it hasn't gone anywhere.
Yeah.
And it comes to a place where the market's in a place where Mobile Legends is bigger, AOV is bigger in China, and Wild Rift is coming.
Yeah.
And a big thing is actually that, for us at the time when we started making Vainglory, maybe for Westerners, the idea of making a MOBA on mobile was like pretty radical at the time, but it's actually not radical at all if you include China into the mix.
Yeah.
Like we were not that far ahead of the game, and it makes perfect sense because League of Legends is huge in China and owned by a Chinese company. Of course, like we were not that ahead of the curve. And it was, we were in a genre that is like, Vainglory had some unique things about it that was different from any other MOBA. But ultimately, I do think that like, it scratches the same itch as LoL.
Yeah.
And LoL is coming home. And one big learning coming out of it is that actually, if you look at what Catalyst Black is, it is substantially riskier in terms of like how different the game is than Vainglory was from MOBAs in general, right? Catalyst Black is not that easily comparable to some other game right now. You can sort of say this element looks like Halo because it's a bunch of people thrown in there. Red team, blue team, capture the flag, let's go.
Right.
Okay, so that's maybe very like classic Halo night. The fact that you're top down and shooting is maybe Brawl Stars like, but the mechanics, the gunfire, the gunplay feels totally different as well.
Yeah.
And maybe you can say that the fact that you turn into a god every couple minutes is like a Destiny super. But overall, it's Catalyst Black isn't like any other game the way Vainglory was like a MOBA. So that's we're doing something that's quite a bit different from what's currently out there. And we felt like we had to do that because one of the main issues is that we weren't sufficiently far ahead of the curve by making a MOBA. It wasn't that original.
I see. Yeah.
Off by a little. And so that's like one big thing about what at the most like highest level what we set out to do.
How do you think
is like the degree of newness is
How do you think you landed on those elements? I mean, I've gotten to see this tail end, but when I came in, I think these kind of core ideas, these kind of core elements, you guys had kind of landed on them. Was it trial and error? Like, I'm certain you didn't just all of a sudden know it's a little bit of Destiny, a little bit of Halo, a little bit of this, right? Like, because you're working on particularly with the engine in mind and the platform in mind, whether that's touch or mobile. Like, how did you find this right mix, or where do you begin? Like,
it's some of it is trial and error, a lot of it is not. I would say that trial and error goes something like this. You don't just make up random stuff and try it. Like if you're gonna do something that takes you actual programming time to actually test, you better think it's actually pretty good in the first place. Where you do trial and error is that you think this is a good idea and you need to verify that it is a good idea. And if it's not, you throw it away, which is different from, I don't even know if this is good, but I'm going to throw it in there just in case it is good. That never happens.
Right.
And you should just, there should be some reason you're doing it in the first place. Otherwise, you're just throwing spaghetti against the wall and seeing what sticks. And so for everything, so for example, why do you transform into a god?
Yeah.
And why like CTF and these types of game modes. So those two, one thing that's connected to those two is that I really like the idea of power spikes, which is that the level of power of any individual is like very different at any given point in time. Sometimes you're extremely powerful, 4 or 5 times more powerful than the average player because you're in primal form. And sometimes you're not. And the rhythm of who is primal and who's not is kind of staggered and unpredictable. And that adds a lot of texture to the game. And another thing is, why do we have to capture the flag? Seems kind of orthogonal at first, but what's so cool about a mode like capture the flag, which by the way was not in the Mastermind thingy that we tested with. What's so cool about capture the flag is that one person is suddenly the most important person on that team because he is carrying the flag and everyone has to protect him and everyone on the enemy team is trying to take him down. And that's kind of like a power spike. It's an importance spike.
Yeah.
You went from like being of average importance amongst the 20, 30 players on the map to like being the most important person temporarily. And then next time it could be a different person who's super important. So I love stuff like that. So varying degrees of power, varying degrees of importance. It's always shifting who it is, when it is. I think that's like one of the basic textures of good multiplayer games.
Yeah, that's super interesting. It's like these boiling points, right? It's like everything kind of has this base rhythm, but then the boiling point happens and it causes everything to have to kind of pivot around it or make
Yeah,
smart decisions around it or attack it, whatever it is, right? And yeah, those kinds of calls to action, to use a marketing term, are really interesting, and they can be very fun, and they
yeah,
present all of these surprises that you couldn't have manufactured any other way, right? Like it's like,
yeah. The motion is like, people talk about great action games have big moments, like that are worth big moments that are memorable.
hmm,
And the thing is, like, in order to have big moments, you have to have small moments. Like, you just can't make every
yeah,
single moment
so
big.
true.
So you have to be pretty clear about when people are not strong and not interesting and not important,
Hmm,
and kind of purposely put that into the game so that there's some contrast to when someone is powerful and when someone is important. So I do think, like, some games fail because they try to make you feel awesome all the time,
hmm.
and it's kind of a relative thing. Some games, like, every time you swing your sword, it is the most glorious PFX ever. Like you, like you are firing off your your ultimate.
Yeah,
It is just a normal attack.
yeah,
Um, and I think that that's an example of when games don't really get it.
got it.
Uh,
Yeah,
in terms of creating moments that are important, moments that are
man,
not.
I totally relate to that. Like I love Sea of Thieves by Rare. We've talked about this a little bit, but I think one of the things I love about that game is its rhythms. Like there are some moments in that game that are just, I mean, boring is not the right word because it's a beautiful world, but you're literally sailing from one point to another, and nothing's happening. It's just literally you're on a boat, like that's it, and it can be so quiet, it can be so serene, like, uh, but at the same time, it can be absolutely chaotic and insane. Cannons and ships on fire, and someone stealing your stuff, someone stabbing you in the back. Like someone's lying to you and to your face. Like it's
Yeah,
almost like the for those chaotic, crazy, insane social moments to happen. Like they need to be contrasted against this more like, yeah, I'm just on this coastline fishing, right, kind of vibe. And I think that game in particular stands out as one that the sort of ups and downs of like we just survived an incredible battle, now we're sailing to the next island, gives you these moments of reprieve that are legit boring almost. And it's like really good. That's like a really good up and down kind of vibe. Super cool. um well, this is awesome, man. Like, I love what you're saying about your process here and kind of the trial and error experience around Catalyst Black. I do think this game feels very unique. It also feels right in that it was born out of the team that built Vainglory. There's this element of competitive spirit and sort of tactical skill, or this idea of a skill ceiling exists, but with this sense of learning that I feel like came out of Vainglory, which is, hey, we don't want to have these massive long queue times. We don't want to make people intimidated to play this game. You should just be able to pick up, get in, play, have some fun, hop out if you need to go do something, right? Almost built around that idea of what a mobile game should be in our lives without compromising core gameplay or meaning in the time that you're spending in it. And so I really love that this sort of recipe that we have here in this game feels appropriate not only to the platform in terms of mobile, but also to what feels like the learnings that came out of the company's previous experience with VG. And so
yeah,
I'm really excited to see what you know, that
yeah,
recipe, that concoction will do on the world in some ways. It's easy for us to think that it feels good and feels right, but I'm partially why I'm super excited about the Secret Service thing is like getting in the hands of people and getting their feedback. These larger, massive playtests are going to be really helpful to knowing if we're on the right path.
yeah. The thing about the drop and drop out is, like, it's not that crazy of an idea because that's what all old school first person shooters were like.
Mm-hmm.
You can drop in and drop out and get replaced by some different player in the middle of the game.
Yeah.
And the concern is, like, what if I want to try hard? And I do think that, like, for the players who want to try hard, there probably we will look at some other way of addressing that. Like, there will be other ways to play the game. Like, as Catalyst Black develops into its after launch, into its seasons, we're going to figure out a way to do try harding. You know,
Yeah.
but what's cool about drop and drop out is not just that, oh, you can play for 2 minutes because you're on mobile. it's a mobile thing. First of all, actually, a lot of people back in those days, first-person shooters, like they do stick around.
Yeah,
Most people will choose to play a full match because it's fun to actually win, get to the end, and see the results. And the second thing is it actually allows us to experiment around with stuff like persistent spaces that you drop in and out of. And we'll talk more about that, like we have more to share about it.
yeah,
But like I really love like Captain, at work,
yeah,
now that we're all at home due to COVID-19, we spend a lot of time hanging out on Discord
yeah,
as the way we interact with each other. We don't, yeah, we do schedule Zoom calls and stuff, but that's not where all the cool stuff happens. That's where the serious stuff happens. All the cool conversations happen by people dropping in and out of persistent rooms on
yeah.
Discord. And I think that's really cool. And that's something that we want to experiment with
Yeah.
in Catalyst Black. It won't be there in the initial launch.
Yeah.
But it's cool.
Well, tell me, what does success look like for you as a designer or a chief of product for Super Evil Megacorp? What does success with Catalyst Black look like? What will make you happy? What will make you feel like, yeah, you were successful here?
Yeah, so besides the cliche of like tons of people play my game,
Yeah.
what do I want to achieve? I very much like to be the game that you can quickly hang out with your friends on, and you don't have to like when Destiny first came out, it is so brutally hard to get 6 people to get together to do those raids. And I know the WoW players are like, well, whatever, we have to get 40. But in the land of shooters, it was unheard of. And it was structurally, just in terms of organizationally, very hard to pull that together. And I first want to be that game where it's like, it is the smoothest way to just drop in and hang out with your friends. The problem with it is that there's a lot of mobile games that have that mission, that are like, easiest way to drop in and hang out with your friends. Cool. But then the gameplay is no good. And sure, you're playing with your friends, you're in a room together, but you also have to be doing something pretty interesting and fun and memorable. And doing that, oftentimes when you do that, the game gets increasingly hardcore and more MMO-like, until once again you have the same problem, which is like, well, you can't, like, you ask your friend to play this game with me, you'd be like, they're like, it's kind of a steep, learning curve. I have to invest like, that much to even understand what's going on.
Yeah.
And I really, really like the days where people just bring a couple Xboxes together and play Halo in a big house or in an office. I think the office LAN party is a sneak into your office at night outside of work hours, get a bunch of Xboxes and take over some conference room TVs and play Halo on a LAN before there was sort of open internet matchmaking. Yeah. And that was in game modes, first of all, Capture the Flag, King of the Hill, game modes that are very easy to understand compared to a MOBA. And the learning curve was significantly easier, but there was still an expression of skill. There's always that one person who wrecks everybody else, even in Halo Night. So it's got the skill depth, but it's also so easy for a bunch of people to get into.
Yeah.
I'd like to be that game that a lot of people connect with and have like sort of these chill, or they can try hard if they want to, but it starts out being chill in the beginning. Share those kind of moments with.
It's funny to hear you talk about these things, because it makes me think about our playtests, and they do feel that way, right? Like everyone looks forward to playtests on Catalyst Black, no matter what their skill level is. But that does not mean Zekant or you or Patrick aren't going to be at the top of the leaderboard in terms of like kill count or skill, right?
Yeah.
It's like, and I love that because it's like the game is still super fun. I mean, we play test every week, all the time, right? And it's not like people are like, oh, I gotta go get beat up by Zekant again. It's like it doesn't have that vibe. Like it's really fun. Like it's fun to play, and yet someone like.
Well, the fact that Zekant like stops every single game, means that there's still a significant expression of skill in this game. That's why Zekant owns the play test.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Granted, he's designing it, so he always has some loophole. He knows some secret build or something, but it's okay. We'll catch up at some point, Zeke, and I'm coming after you.
Yeah.
Um, but well, that's cool, man. What have you found most daunting, or even what do you presently find most daunting about your work on this new game? Um, where are you most challenged right now, and is there something about the time ahead that you're maybe afraid of or concerned about, or just don't see, or you can't have any foresight around? What do you find most intimidating at the moment?
Well, building a game is a lot of work, so I spend a fair amount of time. Even though we talked a lot about design, I spend a fair amount of time on the engineering side. There's a lot of new tech in Catalyst Black, and for a small company pushing out new tech, you're always it's kind of a fingers crossed kind of moment that you can test as much as you want, but when it comes to new technical ideas, new solutions, some things just never survive first contact with real players.
Yeah.
So that's just something that it keeps me up and some other folks up at night maybe.
Yeah.
But it's just things like it's a lot of the way Vainglory worked was like kind of inefficient, and we're doing things very differently. That's more efficient this time, but it hasn't been truly battle tested. We're also doing, and I don't know if you talked with Tommy about this, but we're doing a lot more than we did in Vainglory with lighting,
Right.
which raises one of the problems with Vainglory was that it's actually you need a pretty good phone to play the game well.
Yeah.
And there, in many ways, Catalyst Black as a running client is also much more efficient than Vainglory, but we're also trying to do more. We're trying to do a lot more play. We're trying to do a lot more with levels, and there's just so many things on a technical level that needs to come together. That keeps me up at night.
Yeah, no, I got it. We didn't even get into much of that, but I know you guys took a huge chunk of time to allow Tommy to kind of build into the evil engine in a way that would help not just solve the immediate problems, but maybe even the problems that we could foresee in the future around ensuring that the content that we make for this game can come out at a fast pace or a fast clip. And that absolutely is something to sort of both credit the team with, but also say like, yeah, we hope it all.
Yeah.
It's like
another thing for the players is like Vainglory had very few maps, right? It had two basically.
Yeah.
There was a 3v3 map that was around for 3 years, 4 years, and then there was that 5v5 map, which was a huge gargantuan effort to make, and then we made no other maps after that. And over the course of what 7 years, there were 2 maps. Catalyst Black is going to launch, depending on how things go, with 2 or 3 maps. So that's already a lot right from the get-go. And and the rate at which we intend to release new maps will be completely different from Vainglory because we have finally invested in, and we never did it. We never had the time to do it in Vainglory. Yeah, when you make a new game, you have time, you have a chance to sort of start cleaning certain technical decisions. And we make maps out of a map editor this time.
Yeah.
It's still not like StarCraft level map editor, but this is a game that will have maps. And the maps, as you can see from the videos, they're not like a grid map. Okay, so it's still not that cheap to make a new map, but it's a lot faster than Vainglory.
Yeah.
And that's something that we really wanted to do. Like, we don't want to be a single game mode, single map kind of game.
We talked about the dark side or the scary side of things. What are you most looking forward to with this game? Do you have a bright shining can't wait for X, Y, or Z? Or
so the thing that I really enjoy part of these games is just following the meta, because like at the end of the day, like Zekin's good, but he cannot beat the collective effort of let's say whatever top 10,000 players, the most elite players, not the general player base, but the 10,000 or whatever who is defining the meta of any game. The upper echelon. It's always going to be, there's going to be some crazy shit and some crazy stuff. Sometimes we might have to nerf.
Tommy swore up a storm on his interview. Don't worry.
That was what?
Tommy swore all over the place in his interview.
Okay. Okay. If it's really bad, we have to nerf some things.
Yeah.
But if it's kind of like, I love it when people find things that are just like borderline OP, and I'm just like, wow, I'm just going to let this be OP for a while because you deserve it. You found that. That's pretty clever. And of course, eventually, like it goes from the 1% of players using it to everybody using it, and that's when you have to balance.
Yeah.
But sometimes when I go, this is clearly needs to be balanced. But since only a small fraction of players are using it because it hasn't spread to everybody yet, it hasn't turned into the cliche build yet, I'm just gonna reward these people for being early. Like that's cool. You deserve it. You deserve it. And I love following meta. I love following the crazy builds people come up with and be like, hey, you do this and then this and this. Just watch what happens. Like I really love that.
It's awesome, man. We haven't even really gotten into this yet with the community. I've been working on that progression blog. I feel like I've been trying to chip away at that thing for weeks now, but we have yet to even pull back the curtain on sort of the depth of buildability in this game. And you're right, there's a ton. And this is just at the beginning. And if anything, the opportunity and options will just grow over time as well. So it's pretty cool. And I'm very excited, like you, to see what the community will do when they get it all in their hands. So, well, dude, man, I've really appreciated your time, Q. I know the community appreciates you, not just for all of the incredible work you put into Vainglory, but for the work you are doing on Catalyst Black. And it's an honor to be a colleague of yours. I'm excited to kind of go through this journey with you together. And yeah, man, thanks for teaching me a bit about sort of leading teams and building games. It's really, really fun.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for doing this. And it was fun just chatting with you about game design.
Heck yeah, man. And folks, once again, if you want to join us, be a part of our community, and of course, be a part of the rollout for Catalyst Black, you can find us over at Discord, discord.gg/Catalyst Black. Stay tuned for more information about how you can join the Secret Service. That's our early access program. We'll be talking more about that soon. And yeah, really excited to get this game in your hands. So everyone out there, thank you for being here as well. And of course, never settle for the lesser evil.